All right, everyone, welcome back. It's that time of week. It is Midnight Magic Musings, episode 14. I am your humble host, the Lord Cephas. I am joined by the Earl of Florida. And Earl, before we get too deep into the show this week, I want to thank you because you did a fantastic job last week in my absence. Not only did you do episode 13 of Midnight Magic Musings, you also hosted the WWE Elimination Chamber pay-per-view recap, but not by yourself on that show. You had a special guest. You had a guest host. So I want to simply say thank you to the Baron of Boomtown, the Baron of Bangtown, or whatever terminology he
We're not
wants to use.
calling him that. We're
He
not
wa-
calling him that.
he wants to be called that. I was not involved with
I
booking
want a
him
million
on the
dollars.
well. I listen. I was not involved with booking him on the show, so I don't know anything about it. But it was extremely entertaining, and thank you for everything you did last week on the channel. I greatly appreciate it. I really, really do. I was away taking care of some things in the kingdom that needed to be addressed. We got those done, and so we're back here together once again to talk the most important things going on in pop culture, entertainment, science fiction, literary stuff. And tonight we're gonna expand ourselves a little bit because we're gonna talk some video games, if you will. Now, stay with me on this because we're gonna bring it all full circle. But earlier today, David Zaslav had his Warner Media conference call, and during the Warner Media conference call, he shared some very important things. And that's actually going to be our first topic that we're going to talk about tonight. And that is the video game Hogwarts Legacy, based on the Harry Potter books and the Harry Potter movies. Based on the numbers that Warner provided in their filings to the SEC, they have made somewhere in the range of $850 million. Let me add to that. That means they've sold approximately 12 million units. Now, depending on which version of the game you get, it could be $69. It could be the higher version if you have the add on content. Regardless of what version you have, Earl, this has to be viewed as a massive hit for Warner Entertainment, but also for the power of the franchise that is the Harry Potter series. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I was a big fan of the books. I read the books when I was younger. Obviously, I watched the movies. Um, it has a very, very big fan base. I mean, I don't think people quite understand how big of a fan base it has. There's only one other uh, collection of books that have sold more than the Harry Potter series, and that would be the Bible.
Right.
So that should put this perspective how many copies of this series have been sold. So yeah, I think you know what, I think it was a smart move. They had the prequel series coming out that have been ongoing, and there have been some hits and some not quite on the target hits. So with them pausing that series, they really need to keep Harry Potter in the limelight. And what better way if you're not going to have more books or more movies or more uh, things like that? Why not a game? And I think they struck when the iron's hot. And you know what? Maybe that has to do a little bit with uh, everybody's wanting a very good magic fantasy aspect. And we're
Mhm.
seeing that with the Wheel of Time and House of the Dragon and
Mhm.
the new Lord of the Rings series. So I would think with none of them exactly hitting the target, the bullseye, so to speak, there's
Right.
still that open spot for somebody to come in, and it looks like Harry Potter with a video game came in and nailed the target.
Well, I want to throw in just a couple more statistics for you that were shared today in that conference call. And by the way, we're not going to cover the entirety of it. If you want to get a much better breakdown of it, I would recommend you go to the Valiant Renegade channel. He did over 3 hours of coverage today, live coverage as it was happening. He's a tremendous resource online. Again, that's Valiant Renegade. You can find him on Twitter at Valiant Renegade and also on YouTube. His channel is outstanding. I was on it a little earlier this week. But just a few numbers I want to share with you. They set a Twitch streaming record. Now, Twitch is a platform that people broadcast themselves playing video games, is what they do. 1.28 million peak viewers at the launch of this game, watching the game just being streamed online, played by other people. They topped, it says here, 280 million hours of this game being played online so far. Those numbers are astronomical. I can't even imagine. Now, back in the day when the Earl and I were young, we had an old Nintendo, the NES, and I remember having to leave my video game because you couldn't save anything. That's right. We give love to the NES. You couldn't save your game, and so you had to leave the cartridge in the system until you got home from wherever you had to go, be it school or a family function or church, whatever it was,
And prayed.
and pray it did not die on you or did not go pink or another color in the background. I could never imagine having the time to play that many hours, but people have found a way, all ages, because Harry Potter appeals across all age groups. It's been a
Yep.
massive hit for them. And here's why we bring that up, because as the conference call was, or the shareholders call was really starting to ramp up about what to expect. One of the things coming out of Warner Media is that there is a thought process of, we need more Harry Potter. And I would say, and this is just my opinion, Earl, I'd love to hear yours, based on the results of just a couple of weeks of it being available with this kind of success, I would say now is the time to strike. The iron is not just hot, it's an inferno. So you need to do something with it. And the talk has been, perhaps starting a new movie franchise, maybe based on the Hogwarts video game, or maybe having a television series based on that video game series. What do you think of the potential of that?
You know, it's funny as the first Harry Potter movie came out 22 years ago.
Yep.
That's a very long time for in the world of remakes and not being redone. And one of the complaints I would say about the film series is everything that people loved wasn't able to be included in the series. So I actually said this probably 2 or 3 years ago that I would love it if BBC or some small, some television network was able to get a hold of the rights
Mm-hmm.
and turn each book into a season. You could have an 8 episode, series, maybe 6 episode, whatever it needs to be, but you could be able to hit everything you need and want in
Mm-hmm.
that book, and even introduce original ideas as well. So, I mean that's going back to the original source material, but there is so much that could be done through the introduction of so much. You could have the adults doing it. They had Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, so
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of different aspects, different directions they could go. But I would be giggling in my Grogu slippers with
Very nice.
which by the way I bought today. They were marked down $3. I'm like, oh yes, they have baby Grogu slippers. That's cute. And then
Mm-hmm. Well, the Lord loves
but
a good bargain and at a clearance section. So good on you, sir. Good on you.
yeah, I think there's a lot of potential, a lot of different ways they can go, but they have to be smart. And I think they need to listen to the fans. If the fans want a soft reboot in a series format, I think it would be a great idea. If they don't want that, they want to stick with the older uh, audience. But I think it's rife for the telling, not the taking, the telling.
One of the topics we're going to cover at the end of the show today is The Last of Us and the numbers that were shared in that investor conference call earlier today. Can you imagine, Earl, if they dropped a Harry Potter related television series on HBO Max? What the numbers could potentially look like, the type of hit that it could be, astronomical. What the numbers
Mhm.
could be. Now, that's if they go with the television series. Maybe they say, hey, let's go big screen. Let's maximize our profits as much as possible because you know what? Here comes the merchandising. And I say that because I love Mel Brooks and they have the History of the World Part 2 coming out the first week of March. So we will be checking that out, letting y'all know what we think about it as well. Imagine it, the potential windfall financially of either way that they go, I would see them going more with a movie because it's more of an immediacy of reaping the financial rewards. But which one would you prefer to see, a television series or a movie franchise?
I mean, I really do kind of have my heart set on a series format
Hmm. Okay.
because you could do Hogwarts, but I mean, we learned that there are several different magical schools. You could do the Aurors, the Ministry. Uh,
Hmm.
you could follow that series around, or you could. There's just so many different ways to go. So if you want to go with immediacy, then obviously you probably do want to go with the film series because that's what anything they create is going to be a series. Whether it's a film series, they're not looking at standalone things, which we saw from Strange Reason Where to Find Them. That their
Right.
plan is serious. That's everybody's plans these days. Is we don't want a standalone film, we don't want a standalone
Hmm.
book or standalone anything. We want a universe.
Right.
Thanks to Marvel, the cinematic universe that connected everybody. So many people are willing to connect their universes and have all these different IPs connected. So I mean, and it's not the short format. It's not just a one and done now. Everything is the long form, whether it's a film series or a book series or a television series. So I think one of the things they're going to start working on is how do we continue the success that we have for this game. Do we want to do a sequel and start working
Hmm.
on that? Do we want to create a lot of content that's downloadable or purchasable?
Well, let me add
But
just one or two more things to what you're saying to bolster what you're saying. One other statistic I thought was fantastic. I do love statistics every chance I get. They saw a 300% increase in traffic in their online portal, which is their Wizarding World portal.
mhm,
That's a massive increase. And by no means is this franchise dead. It's very active, but a 300% increase, I guarantee you, in the next quarter, you're going to hear more people at the parks. And they're going to be visiting and revisiting the Harry Potter world and the Harry Potter rides at those parks because
yeah,
there's going to be a renewed interest in it. That only, look, that builds the brand all the way across. This is, from my perspective, and I'll only speak for me, but I think the numbers back me up. We use the term on this show because we talk about toys and collectibles as well. We talk about evergreen properties, properties that are good no matter whether there's a movie in the theaters or a TV show on streaming or on linear television. It's always selling no matter what. And I don't care where you go, whether it's Target, Walmart, or your grocery store. You will see Harry Potter themed and related items. The merch is always there and it's always selling. And so this is the definition to me of an evergreen property. And I believe they're getting ready to strike gold and strike it big. That's my perspective and where this can go. Once they finally announce which direction they're going to go. Right now, it's just rumors that are leaking out. But I really believe in this case, Earl, where there's smoke, there's absolute fire with this.
well, look at about 2 months ago, I was over at it's a bookstore, Books of Money in Second and Charles, and they had obviously you had like two or three tables, Harry Potter tables, the books and some visuals and things like that, and some of the popo Funko art and things like
Right.
that. I stopped in there not even a week ago, and those three tables no longer exist. They're now like two whole sections are cleared with toys and
Mm-hmm.
figurines and books and visual guides and shirts and pillows and blankets and wizarding so they knew it was coming. They knew, I mean, they already had an established Harry Potter section,
Mm-hmm.
but with the massive success of this game, they know that people are going to want things, and so they're going to put it out there, and people are going to consume it.
Well, you mentioned that I was at FYE over the weekend when I was traveling with my family for some family commitments, and they had a tremendous
When you
section of
abandoned me,
what's that?
when
I
you
didn't hear.
abandoned me, you mean?
I did not abandon you, but as the Lord, I have to tend to my kingdom, and my kingdom is always expanding. You have to understand, And while I was there, I picked up some specialized Funko Pops from the Harry Potter series. I had Hermione, Ron Weasley, and a Harry Potter Funko Pop, but they were different than anything else I had, and so I picked them up. I add them to my collection. I mean, there's so much merch that they have now, but you ain't seen nothing yet of what I think
Yeah.
Warner Brothers what is fixing. Universal is about to do and about to release on us. And you know what? I'm here for it. I hope they do it, and I hope we have movies and or television series for years to come. I hope the books are good, and I hope the fans just appreciate what they have because you know what? One day the fad ends and something else comes along. So I hope the fans really appreciate it while they have it. And speaking of appreciating it, as we almost look like we got hit by an earthquake, but no, I just hit my computer. We're going to go into our next topic here. And one of the things that was mentioned on the investor call was the Lord of the Rings. One of the things that David Zaslav, who is the president, who is the CEO of Warner, said is they had inked a deal earlier to do not one Lord of the Rings movie, Earl, but multiple Lord of the Rings
Mhm.
movies. Apparently, Peter Jackson, who was the director on the original three and the Hobbit movies, those three movies, he was in those as well. He's going to be involved again in these series. I got to tell you, dude, I am over the moon excited about the opportunity to go back to Mordor and see more of the Lord of the Rings series. What's your immediate reaction hearing that they are going to revisit Lord of the Rings theatrically?
Um, Honestly, right now after Amazon's first season of the series, I'm a little bit lackluster because of. I mean, it missed the mark. You still got what you expected, but
Mm-hmm.
I was wanting a little bit more heart to it, in the fact that I couldn't really connect with these characters as well as I did, you know, the film series,
Mm-hmm.
and part of it is because they're elves and they're dwarves and that particular aspect of
Right.
the Hobbit type creatures. So I mean, I understand they're not human, they're not easily relatable right off the bat, so it takes a certain amount of time.
Right.
But it's to me it's night and day between the series run and the first Lord of the Ring movie. So when I saw the first one, I watched it three times in less than 24 hours. I never read the books, nothing, no
Wow.
other exposure to it. I love the series so much. That first movie, the fellowship aspect,
Mm-hmm.
it pulled you right in because you had so many different characters and character profiles, if you will, that
Mm-hmm.
you could find which one you identified more with. And
Right.
so for me, I was able to see myself in this fellowship when I was, I don't know, 18, 17, something like that. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and then seeing it on the big screen, these were made for the theatrical viewing on the big screen. The scope is massive and expansive. And so, if they do this, you're going to have your built, just as we were talking about with Harry Potter, you're going to have a built-in fan base that's going to be, you know, screaming, "Give us!" And then if Peter Jackson writes, directs, or whatever is involved,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have more people going, "This is what we want. This is what we want." And so I think that they potentially could be looking at a gold mine as well because it's an IP that everybody knows about, just like Harry Potter, and it fits that absence that when Game of Thrones passed away, there's that power vacuum out there that still has yet to be filled.
Right. And if you look at it, you have Game of Thrones you just referenced, not kid friendly, but whereas you have the Lord of the Rings or the Harry Potter series, it's for all members of the family, all ages. It's a lot more palatable,
Exactly.
which makes it a whole lot more marketable, which to me means a whole lot more money can be made off of those properties. Although, look, there's nothing wrong with Game of Thrones if that's what you like. Hey, by all means, like it. That doesn't hurt my feelings any. But you're limited in the scope of your audience, whereas this one can cross all brands, all age groups, which means the kids standing in the checkout line. Earl, we know all about this. Daddy, can I have
Yep.
one of these? No. But I want it. No. but you give in because you don't want to have an argument in front of people, and they know that. That's why they put those items there at the checkout. It's not This is not new information, but it's something that appeals, and it still has appeal years later. You have kids who grew up reading the books, who are adults now, who I promise you will come back out to support the Harry Potter,
Yeah.
or they will come back out and support the Lord of the Rings. I will go. One of my best friends, a friend of the channel, Broken Ansible, who lives in another state, I promise you, if that movie drops, he's going the night of. And he might see it twice, partially because he has nothing else to do, but secondarily, he loves that stuff. And I think you will see that type of fan engagement. And to be honest with you, Earl, that will become the envy of Star Wars, the envy of Marvel to a degree, which we'll talk Marvel as we go through here in just a little bit. In fact, that's going to be our next topic here. But this is huge news for fandom as a
Yeah.
whole. I'm excited about that. We need positive news because so many times there's so much negativity, or as in a football team setting, they're talking about noise in the system, right? It seems like
Yeah.
in pop culture and entertainment, there's so much noise in the system. Oh, you can't like this, or you should like this, or whatever. It's just nice to hear some positivity, of things to
Yeah.
look forward to. I don't have to feel shame that I look forward to this because it was good entertainment, and my expectation is I'm going to get to visit those worlds again, which is why we had such high expectations for the Star Wars prequels and the sequels, because we got to go live in that world again. And so,
Yep.
like you, I'm super excited about the potential of what they may do. Now, you mentioned it. You watched the series. It wasn't the greatest thing you've ever seen. Serviceable, but it didn't blow you away. Is that a fair assessment, or am I putting words in your mouth there?
No, I would say a lot of things hit the mark
Mm-hmm.
beautifully, but then there were some things that just fell short, and because of the fact that we were so spoiled by how well the films were integrated, both the scenery, the CGI, the acting, the story was so integrated so flawlessly
Mm-hmm.
for the majority, that when I was watching the series and one part just wasn't hitting the mark, it, I I felt that because of the expectation that I had and what they've delivered to us before, it made you notice that it just wasn't quite Lord of the Rings that you know for what from 2001 to 2012, 13, somewhere in there when the Hobbits wrapped up.
Do you think it
You
took
know,
you
we
out?
had
Do you think it took you out of the movie with that, or out of the series? I should say. I'm sorry.
I don't know.
But it definitely seems like there's some conflict within you, you might say, regarding the series.
Well, yeah, the series has some issues that they need to address before they get to season two. Uh, I don't want to spoil anything, so I can't specifically say what it is for those who haven't
Sure.
watched it. But they do have a few aspects that they need to beef up and
Mm-hmm.
to hit on all cylinders, because if you misfire, what people are going to notice about a beautiful car isn't going to be that it's beautiful, that's cherried out, that it ran you know 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds. It's going to be like, yeah, that car, the car that misfired. They're going to
Mm-hmm.
remember that instance where it wasn't hitting just perfectly. And so I think that's where Lord of the Rings, the series, and the House of the Dragon, which is out, they have a slight misfiring that people aren't fully going all in. You can say the same thing about the Wheel of Time, also with Prime or the Willow series. A lot of people are like, it just wasn't exactly what I wanted. So you're also dealing with a lot of expectation from the fans too.
You are.
So
Well, and it'll be interesting that if indeed they move forward with the movies, and that'll be my assumption that they will pursue. How would that affect the television series? Amazon. My understanding from we were talking off air, Amazon has an exclusive 5-year contract. Is that correct with the Tolkien estate? I
uh,
believe you were sharing me.
yep. So
Okay.
Amazon has a 5 season commitment to bring Lord of the Rings to streaming
Okay.
television.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is a completely separate deal because that is between Amazon and the Tolkien estate. How
Wow.
has New Line purchased Middle Earth Enterprises, which is what's involved with the worldwide exclusive rights to the films, to a lot of merchandising, and a few other things that aren't included in the Lord of the Ring uh, ownership of the Tolkien estate. So that'll be interesting to see where they decide to tell the next tale, because there's nothing stopping them that I know of from going, you know what? Why don't we make a live action film version of what Amazon's doing right now? And then you have a completely different reimagining. That I know I don't believe that will happen,
Right.
because you're at that point juggling with double edged blades, and
Yep.
if one mistake you slice yourself. I don't think they'll do that, because that'll be too close to potentially messing up a lot on both of their ends. But
Mhm.
as far as I know, there's nothing that says they could not do that.
And realistically, you don't really want to. You want the franchise to be healthy overall because what you don't want is stink from one part of the franchise getting over onto something else, which is something we've talked
Yeah,
about with other properties previously. And so I think there would be some diplomacy and delicacy involved in how they would handle that. But
yeah,
so a lot of good information. There's far more. Like I said, check out the Valiant Renegade channel if you want more information on YouTube. He does a fantastic job, both live and in review. So Earl, some really interesting things coming out of the Warner Brothers media, the investors call, if you will. Very much looking forward to seeing what comes of that. They also talked about Superman being such an important property to them. I didn't get to listen to all of it, but I got as much as I could after I was done with work. So let's transition over a little bit. That we've kind of lived in the Warner Brothers area. Let's kind of transition over to Disney. Let's see what's going on with Disney. So, Deadline had an article, or Variety rather, had an article up this week that
hmm
Disney Plus is moving forward with their newest Marvel series that is going to be coming to Disney Plus, and that is Wonder Man is going to
yep,
be the one of the newer series that is coming. Now, this announcement comes on the heels of the fact that Marvel has made it very clear they're pushing back a lot of these projects. Honestly, some of them should already be out, but they're being pushed back. Remember, Bob Iger came out and said last week to 10 days, we are going to look at the budgets and make sure we allocate our monies properly, which is really
yeah,
code for we've been spending out of control. We're not getting the return on investment that we need. And at this point, Earl, Wall Street doesn't care about how many subscribers you have. They care about
yeah,
how much money are you
yep,
making. And if you look at Disney's earnings, they earn, well, they have different channels in different countries. They have Hotstar over in, let's say, India. And they had the Cricket League exclusive rights. Okay. But
hmm
the Cricket League wanted to also have them buy the streaming rights. Well, they paid $3 billion for linear rights to broadcast the Cricket League on just linear television, which is a big deal over there still. Then they wanted to charge them 3 billion for the streaming rights, and Disney said no. I agree with Disney. I don't think that's a good outlay of funds.
yeah,
But if you look at their numbers compared to Warner Brothers, Disney averages about $4 per subscriber. That's about how much money they make off of an average
yeah,
subscriber. Whereas Warner Brothers makes an average of about $10 and change off of a subscriber to HBO Max. And so they're a little bit better positioned financially, basically doubling what Disney already does. And so that puts Disney behind the eight ball because HBO Max only has 100 million subscribers. Disney has 200
but they
million,
also,
but they make
but there's
half as much.
also a yeah, there's
Exactly.
also a
So
big difference with how much they're charging, almost
ex-
double.
exactly right. And so you see that Warner Brothers is on the uptick. Their streaming service lost money, but then again, pretty much everyone's does. So
Yeah,
I'm not gonna fluff that one either way. The numbers are what they are. What is it you said on your short? We won't pad the stats. We're not going to pad the stats here. Those numbers are what they are. But Wonder Man coming out, I wanted to ask you specifically because one of the criticisms that we've talked about on our Midnight Magic Musings after show, as in when we get off of here and we're still talking because we don't want to go to bed, is it seems they really do try to touch on properties that are not the most popular. And I would say, unless you're a comic reader, Wonder Man is pretty much an unknown property. Similar in
Yeah.
vein to the Guardians, similar in vein to, well, really, Captain Marvel. No one knew who Captain
Listen.
Marvel was, but they positioned that movie just right. Between Black Panther and Endgame, you had to see it. Ended up $1 billion
Yep.
property. So they leveraged that one really, really well. But then they had Miss Marvel. Not so, it didn't work as well, even though I enjoyed it a great deal. And I know that you and your kids did as well. It wasn't the hit they hoped. So we have a lot of smaller properties being brought in that aren't the big hits. And I'm concerned that maybe Wonder Man might be the next in a long line of properties that underperform, not because they're bad properties, but because they don't have the
Yeah.
investment from the fandom. What would
Mhm.
you say to my long rambling statement on Wonder Man?
I agree.
I walked into that one. That's okay.
You did.
I did.
No, I mean, I personally think that part of their approach is actually pretty smart. You're taking these lesser known IPs and you're growing them. However, then Disney turns around and goes, it's going to be our movie or TV show. Let's put a $200 million budget on it." And that's where they diverge from where I would agree. I'm like, if you're going to take some of these smaller IPs that do not have any built-in fan base,
Right.
then you need to tell a great story, get some great talent, great storylines, great directors, but you need to rein in your spending with those CGI and special effects. You need to make people care before you sink $200 million into a movie or a series to promote a character that nobody cares about right now. Because I can tell you, unless I see the trailer and it hooks me, Wonder Man has no pull on my heartstrings or anything. And so I think part of their approach, I'm behind, but the other part of their approach, I'm like, you need to conserve. You need to, and we've talked about this so many times. Hollywood in general and these big studios in particular need to figure out at what point are you actually making money. If you make a movie for $50 million, that's a great movie, and it pulls in 300, $400 million.
Right.
That's awesome. If you make
Mm-hmm.
a $300 million movie and it makes $600 million, that's not that awesome.
Well,
So
it's
again, it's
yeah.
yeah,
To me, it's the
that's
return
the
on
thing.
you're talking about the return on investment. Look at Minions:
Exactly.
Rise of Gru, $80 million movie plus marketing. So let's say 125 or 150. Let's just make that number, and it's out there cracking 400 million. You have
Yeah.
Puss in Boots, completely ridiculous. That movie is still charting in the movie theater. It's still
Yeah.
top three. That should not be
Yep.
happening. But because there's such a dearth of animated features,
Mm-hmm.
family entertainment, it continues to leg out far beyond what it should have done. This small movie that didn't
Yeah.
cost a whole lot, based on a franchise that doesn't do anything anymore, has now become a massive success. So
Exactly.
it can be done. Like you said, you need to have an IP that has something interesting to it,
Mm-hmm.
because you can't always count on the nostalgia factor. It at a
Yeah.
certain point that runs out.
It's what you pointed out. Guardians of the Galaxy was a very much a lesser known IP,
Mm-hmm.
but what did it have it going for it? A talking raccoon, a
Yep.
talking a tree.
Yep.
What is this? And but what else did they have? A great cast, great
Yes.
directing,
Mm-hmm.
and then the special effects on top of that. It and the story was cohesive. So I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it was that they were hitting on all cylinders. So they that's the difference between the Guardians of the Galaxy and
Mm-hmm.
potentially what we may get from Wonder Man, or what we're
Mm-hmm.
seeing happen in other superhero movies across across the boards is
Yep.
they're just not hitting. They're not resonating, and
Well,
that's what we need.
the other thing Guardians had going for it, which really set the standard for superhero movies for the last 10 years, the soundtrack. Everybody
Oh,
could
good
enjoy
lord!
that
Before that,
soundtrack. Literally, think about what is the most obvious soundtrack from any other movie in Marvel other than Guardians. Probably the Avengers theme. That dun 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 dun.
yeah,
You know that when you hear it. But other than
yep,
that, you don't really look at a soundtrack. You think Iron Man being played in Iron Man, right? Beyond
yeah.
that, there's really nothing there. That movie added that and just pushed it over the top. But
Oh, ab-
here's what I want to hit on. So you have Wonder Man, not a super popular IP. You have Miss Marvel, She Hulk, which should have been a much more popular IP, did not work for a myriad of reasons. Moon Knight, it's coming back for a season two, but it didn't rank. It didn't rank in the Nielsen's. It just didn't. Loki's coming back for a season two. That ranked some, but WandaVision is wrapped up and done. Falcon and Winter Soldier, I'm pretty sure their run on Disney Plus is done.
well,
So
yeah,
because they're going into movies, but look, you're going to get smaller returns on these smaller IPs. I really believe, and so I do hope what you're
mhm,
saying is true that the budgets are not super high because getting that return on investment, I don't know that you get that many subscribers, and the ones you get often will drop it after they binge it. So that's the challenge these streaming services are dealing with. That's
well, I
good.
think I think there's two different paths that are being taken by streamers. Like Disney Plus, I think they're trying to keep their prices lower
Mm-hmm.
because their streaming service is kind of like at a plateau with their
Yes.
subscribers.
Yes.
However, with things like HBO and Netflix, and I do this as well. I will sign up and watch what I want to watch, and then
Mhm.
I don't want to pay that $15 every month.
Right.
you know, especially when you're doing several different streaming networks.
Mhm.
You have to pick and choose which ones you want. But I've got kids, so for
Yep.
me, Disney Plus, that price tag on there, I and the fact that I have kids, it means I keep them. I don't ever drop them. I haven't dropped them in over a year because of the price tag, the fact that I've got kids, and then when their IPs drop, I'm like, well, I'm also going to watch this. I'm paying for it. I'm watching it. Mandalorian, Boba Fett,
Right.
that sort of thing. But with like HBO, Netflix, Netflix, I dropped it again. I dropped it again because I was like, well, I got about a month before Vikings of Valhalla season 2 comes out,
Right.
so I'll wait until February and pick it up. But so that there's two different paths. HBO is and Netflix, and some of them are getting some bigger price tags where they're double of what Disney is, or Hulu is, or Peacock, or CBS, or Discovery Plus. There's two different lines of thought, and they both could be right, but there's very well a good possibility that only one of them will be right, and eventually, not necessarily too far down the road, we'll see who wins that streaming war.
We will, and we won't talk about it on this show. Maybe we'll get to talk about it this weekend. It's something we're working on, but Apple TV has emerged as a player to start airing college football. They are
Mm-hmm.
in negotiations with the Pac-10 or Pacific. Well, there are 10 left. They actually had 12 till UCLA and USC are bolting to the Big Ten, but the Pac-12 is negotiating with Apple TV. But the payout's not going to be that great per school. I mean, there are certain incentives you can hit for new subscribers and watch content. But what these streaming services are realizing is that live sports programming, that's your moneymaker right there. That's why Disney went all in on the cricket league on Hotstar in India because that is a major sport there. You're going to get a return on that, and so it's going to be interesting to see not only how they deal with their scripted programming, but how they incorporate live sports programming in as well. And we talked about Warner
Yeah.
Brothers. Look, they own TNT, TBS. When the NCAA tournament kicks off, that's the basketball tournament every year. It's a massive moneymaker. That's their baby. They share that with CBS and Viacom. And so A lot of revenue opportunities we're going to see for them coming up. All right. Well, that's our thoughts on Wonder Man. We'll have more as we go, but let's stay with Marvel and with Disney if we could. And here's our next topic. That is Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Now, Earl, you went and you took your babies to see, if I remember correctly, Avatar: The Way of Water, because it's not Avatar 2, as I was corrected, and you saw Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Give us a little bit of spoiler-free feedback on Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania.
Oh, okay, here we go. Spoiler free. And
All right.
I'm actually got a review that should be dropping tomorrow. So I'll try not to touch on what I've already written.
Mm-hmm.
Spoiler free. It is. I'll use the trailer for reference. So from watching the trailer, you've got like what 15 seconds maybe that exists in the regular world. Then the entire rest of the trailer is in the quantum zone. So the
Right.
movie follows that kind of time frame as well, and how much time is spent where.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know that a lot of critics have voiced their opinions, and that a lot of negativity of one sex or another, depending
Mm-hmm.
on the critics, has been stressed, and I guess took away from their enjoyment of the film.
Right.
Now, for me, on a whole, this movie was very, very enjoyable. I mean, I can't actually stress how enjoyable it was. I went and I had my 7 and 8 year old kids, a boy and a girl, and then I had my 17-year-old daughter also but with us. We went and got the double feature, as you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And they were interested in watching Avatar 2 and not so much interested in watching Ant Man, except for my 7-year-old son who dressed up as Ant Man. So he was invested.
Sure.
Uh, 20 minutes, 20 minutes into the movie, my 17-year-old had to go to the bathroom, but she chose not to go to the bathroom because she was like, I don't want to miss anything. My
Mm-hmm.
8-year-old daughter, who didn't want to pay attention to it because she just wanted to put the water animals in Avatar 2 and everything, she was sitting there giving a running commentary of, did you just see that? Yes, I'm watching
I
the same thing you are. Of course I saw it. Did
I
you
don't
just
know
see that?
where that would come from either, Earl. That's obviously she didn't get it from our side of the family.
Yeah, I was like, but so trying to give no spoilers. Obviously, there's a lot of praise out there for Jonathan Majors, his portrayal as
Mm-hmm.
King, and I have to you know, second those opinions. He was very good. It's it reminded me of the Thanos Killmonger kind of uh, story, backstory, in that they have reasons for doing what they're going to do,
Mm-hmm.
and the choices, the ends may not necessarily justify the means, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
That trope there, but
Mm-hmm.
my one of my favorite parts, and also for my daughters, was the world building. It was To me, it was very well done. I mean, I enjoyed the CGI immensely. It was beautiful, uh, almost seamless. I mean, it felt like I was watching a Star Wars movie.
Nice.
When you're introduced to new planets, new species, new environments, and
Mm-hmm.
it can change because of different worlds and things. Well, this is the
Right.
quantum zone, so you have a whole bunch of different things. So it was. I cannot go see this movie. For Ant Man fans, you have the humor, you have the fun, you have the heart. They're
Mm-hmm.
still there, and even though you have more characters in it, uh, almost all of them get their time to shine and get their character development, and that's great. For everything from Ant Man all the way to Michael Douglas's Hank Pym, and
Right.
but then uh, again we mentioned Jonathan Majors standout. But for me, one of the best parts of the movie is you get to see the effects of what these heroes do and the fights and everything that happen in this realm. And you never see that almost ever. You remember watching Man of Steel with Superman when everything got tore up, and then
Right.
you got a Brent Simpson Batman versus Superman, what it was like to literally see these quote unquote gods fighting in the air, the destruction, And then in the Marvel universe, we got to see a little bit of that with Age of Ultron, when they were destroying everything, and then
Right.
Captain America, you had Baron Zemon's backstory. You know, so those are two instances of, for most things, because you can watch Star Wars movies, Star Trek movies, any other science fiction action
Mhm.
movie, and we don't really care about what happens to the communities, or what happens to
Right.
the mass destruction, because they're secondary. They're not supposed to really matter, but only a few times do they matter. And in this movie, you care, and you actually get a satisfactory uh, conclusion for the secondary characters in this realm that you shouldn't really have cared about, even though it was beautiful. But
Right.
there are standouts in it. So I'm like, I can't tell you without spoiling things that it hits. To me, Ant Man hit on all cylinders, and then they hit the nitrous buttons and just went. They flew. It was a cohesive story. It slowed down in one particular part of the movie, but it was necessary. But it was a movie that my 7-year-old daughter, my 17-year-old daughter, my 8-year-old son, and a slightly older, more, more matured adult watched. Yeah, we'll just, and I'm talking physically matured in years, not necessarily in emotional maturity. I see your reactions over there. But all of us sat and we watched this film, and we were invested, and we were like, we're gonna wait till the end credits before we use the restroom. So I mean,
Hmm.
for that wide range of ages, for all of
Hmm.
us to be sitting there invested and doing commentary back and forth, I
Right.
can't give it love. And that was
Uh,
my long-winded response to your previous one.
all right. So I will get to see it this weekend. I look forward to actually seeing it. I have remained spoiler free, so I'm feeling pretty good about myself. Hopefully, I can get to the weekend that way. Last thing, would you recommend it on a scale of 1 to 10? What kind of score would you give it based on what you just told us?
I I would give it I would give it an 8.5 out of 10. You know, it's a
Well,
solid B.
hmm,
And the trailer spoiled this. Look out for Modoc, and that's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say. You saw him in the trailer, so it wasn't a spoiler, but look out for him. And it, he, yeah, that's all I can say.
all right. I'm probably gonna have something to say on that when the time comes. I've seen it in the trailer, and I'm like, no. Anyway,
Oh, I felt that way too. I felt that way
okay,
too. But after watching the movie, I'm like, you know what? I
all right.
should hate this,
Mhm. By the
but
way, I think it's interesting.
yeah,
You gave it what, 85 out of 100, 8.5
yeah,
out of 10.
I would give it a solid 85. I'd be tempted to push that up to like an 87.5.
all right, we're not grading on a bell curve, Junior. Keep it at 85. And the reason I need you to do that is because that's pretty much what's been the score of the fans as a whole. If you look at the
Yeah,
aggregate scores, that's pretty much
they're
in line
B's.
where, yeah, that's where everyone. And honestly, that's unusual for a Marvel movie. Typically, they score higher than that. But we've
Yeah,
seen a lot of critics who have been very complimentary of Marvel, even through the Eternals, which I said I didn't like it. I tried to have an open mind. I didn't make it through the credits very well without like, oh come on. Even that one didn't score that low. So that tells you critically, I'm like, I question some of you critics, right? But in this
yes,
case, the pendulum has completely shifted. Now you've got critics just piling on, burying this movie, and I just find that to be an interesting dichotomy of, well, we were over here for so long, and now we're over here, and from what I'm hearing from you, that may not be a totally fair assessment. Now, listen, if that's your opinion, it's your opinion. I'm not going to try and
yeah.
talk you out of it, but it's
Well,
just it's just interesting to see the critic score versus the fan score, in this
I've
particular instance.
here's a funny thing is we've heard that it's bombed. It's messed up horribly, but it's the third highest grossing film in February, only behind Deadpool and Black Panther, the OG version.
Right.
Okay, this movie doubled what the first one made, and made the second one made in the opening weekend, because the first one made, I think, 57 million, and the
Right.
second one made 75 million. This one hit almost 120 million. Now, every other movie in theaters, all there's like 50 something of them. Add all the other ones together, they made 40 million. This one made 120 million dollars.
Okay.
So everybody's like, "Oh, it did horrible." The idea that it was going to hit this and this, and it didn't hit it. Well, guess what? 2 months ago, they were saying it was going to hit almost. I think it was between 114 and 120 million dollars. And then earlier in the month, they're like, "Oh no, it's going to be down to like 100 to 105 million." Well, it hit 120 million. What are you talking about? Where is it not hitting where it needs to be? And guess what? In China, it made less than $20 million in that area, and that is surprising because, well, China is a large market for films, and so right now it's sitting right at, I think it's $357 million
Okay.
in a week.
Okay.
So, I mean, what more do you want this to do? Everybody's bashing it, but it hit the milestones that was set out 2 months ago and 1 month ago. It is the third highest grossing film in February, only behind Black Panther, which was $1 billion, and Deadpool, which was just crazy. And, you know, so I think you still might owe me a pizza.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate for a minute on some of those things. Number
Okay.
one, number one, I don't care
Mm-hmm.
what's the highest grossing film in February. I really
I
don't.
don't either,
It,
but
it
it's a
does.
statistic.
It is a statistic, and you can find a statistic to support anything you want. Just like I could do opposite ones. It's
Yeah.
math. You make it whatever you want it to be. And being sports fans, we understand, right, how you do that to bolster your argument.
Yep.
Deadline said 2 weeks ago it was going to make 280 million cumulative its first weekend. It came in around 225, wasn't it?
Yeah, it came in, I think, like
So
50 million
so
under.
people look at that and say, okay, it didn't hit its estimates, therefore it underperformed. The
Yeah.
question I ask is, who's the one doing those estimates? Because if you had said the estimate was 200 and they made 225, you'd be singing about, look, they beat the estimates. So I don't know who's responsible for those estimates, but I'll set that aside. I will say, and I continue to say this every time a big movie has a big opening, it's
Mm-hmm.
hollow because with inflation, ticket prices are much higher, which
Oh,
now
absolutely.
means if you do the math, that means less people are going to the movies. So
Yeah.
if you want to make the argument that these movies, and this is not just an Ant-Man issue, you're probably going to see this with Guardians too. Well, Guardians
Yeah.
3, but I meant the next Guardians movie or the Marvels, right? Or Indiana Jones. You're going to see diminishing returns even if you have a big number. You look at that and go, those are inflated, no pun intended, in a
Yeah.
lot of ways. So I think people looking at it and saying, well, yes, that number is big, but it's not comparable to the prior ones. It's actually less people seeing it. And that's true. But I will yield to what you say and simply say, let's see where it finally totally ends up. If it ends up a 2 times or 2.5 times multiplier, good on Disney. We're really going to
Yeah.
know this weekend. How far will it fall? Because the joke is always with a Marvel movie, does it fall 50%, 60%? Does it pull a
Thor:
Thor
Love
and
and
hit
Thunder
like,
was 68.
was it 68? So that's
Yep.
that's the cliff, right? Anything if they hit like a 70, the sky literally would be falling at that point. I don't think they will.
At that point, they don't recover because this movie continues by word of mouth and the
Yep.
audience talking about it. If it drops 70%, then Eigler might as well shove them shove them off the cliff.
And I'm not trying to argue it's a failure. I'm just saying it just depends. Can I say this on a certain point of view? I'm going to quote Obi-Wan there for you from Return of the Jedi. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yep.
There are some things that are troubling for movie franchises as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk about that in our roundup, our triple M overtime. We're going to do something a little different this week at the very end to cover topics that we didn't have banners for, that we weren't going to make main topics. Just some random things on my mind, and I'm sure the Earl will have some of those as well. So we'll stay on that story. Well, I've got one main topic left here for the show, And that is a number that was released on the earnings call again today from Warner Brothers. And that was simply The Last of Us, the post apocalyptic series on HBO. When
Yep.
they all totaled the views for that premiere episode, it totaled 35 million views.
Yep.
Dude, we grew up in the 80s and the 90s when MASH at one point, the old television show, had the record for the most watched episode for the finale. The
Yep.
running joke was in New York City, they had massive drops in water pressure after the show was over because everyone held going to the bathroom until it was over. We don't see those kind of numbers anymore. Even the Super Bowl, which was up actually this year versus the last few years, 35 million is a massive, massive number across linear cable. That means watching on your cable or HBO
Mm-hmm.
Max. That's a massive number. Now, obviously, they have not stayed at 35 million. I don't believe any show could ever sustain that in the world in which we live, the way entertainment and media is consumed. But I got to tell you, dude, that's one more win
Yeah.
for HBO Max to end up with that many views. It's astonishing. Have you ever seen anything like that? And what do you attribute that to?
Well, I think it's a big win for HBO Max, but I also think it's a big win for any of these video game companies that want to make, you know, their transition.
Mm.
Uh, it gives them the go ahead that it's possible. You could pull out a Last of Us, or you can pull out a Sonic, or you can pull out,
Mm.
all these different IPs that are actually managing to hit the mark with the fans. So I think this is just another green flag for all those smaller companies. Like, let's push our next one.
Right.
Let's give this guy a shot. HBO Max. I think it was said that the premiere night, their servers went down
Yep.
because so many people had got on to watch it. I mean, how large are these servers to begin with? And you're telling me that, and you knew you're gonna pull it, but you're telling me Game of Thrones didn't knock the servers out,
Yep.
but The Last of Us, the premiere episode, did. That right there is to tell you something. Game of Thrones
Absolutely.
was the king. So what does
Mm-hmm.
that say about the first episode of this new series that's based on a video game? So it's supposed to be horrible. Guess what? The server said night night. So I
One,
think that's
one
a big feather in HBO's hat.
I'm going to give you one other little nugget from that conference call today. They now list their video game division, Warner Brothers, under
Mm-hmm.
the same category as their streaming. They're including that. Now it has its own line item, don't misunderstand me,
Yeah,
but it's now categorized and grouped under that because they're looking at video games as a way to extend the brands, which is really what they should have been. We should have been doing this all along
yeah,
across all platforms. But I we'll see how The Last of Us continues on when it comes back next season. And when I say next season, probably in 2 years, that is the HBO way. Um, that this is the way for them, like it is for another show that's going to debut in about a week and a half. And so
yep.
this is really all that we had prepared for tonight. And so what we want to do is move over into one other thing, and that is an overtime session where we're just going to freestyle some topics that we didn't prepare for, just some things that have popped up or
Freestyle.
message. That's right, little messages that I've been sent during the show and whatnot. So a couple of things that I want to mention. Number one, Kevin Costner's lawyer fired back at Paramount at Taylor Sheridan, who is the writer,
Yeah.
director, creator of the Yellowstone universe, saying it's not true. His client is not trying to get out of work. He's the hardest working person there. Um, Earl, this Yellowstone thing is not going away, and Paramount's releasing a statement saying all the right things, but maybe I'm wrong. But the more reporting I hear that goes on, the less likely I think Yellowstone survives the season. They may just cut their losses because they don't even have the second half of the season written yet. You can't even put it into
Yeah.
production because it's not even complete because they're not sure what's going to happen with their star. Any change in your feeling on how this goes, or do you think they just kind of limp to the finish and then transition into
Well,
a new
here's a
series?
here's a hypothetical question for you. Say you're a say you're a streaming network and you got this show and you
Yep.
hired an actor and a very established, mature, older actor, and he is the heart and soul of this show for several seasons. But
Mhm.
now you think, why don't we save us that kind of money? Let him go, do a soft reboot, save our money, pick up another actor, and run him with it for a little bit, but save the money that we were paying. But before we do this, why don't we say that the main actor is having throwing temper tantrums? Now there's a completely different. I feel bad for this streaming network. This is
Right.
ridiculous. The kind of conditions that they have to deal with, and now there's a report that that is a completely inaccurate statement. Who are you going to believe? The first one who said something or the second one? Is
Well,
either one of them true? Is there truth in some of it? I mean, what do you think about that hypothetical question and scenario?
so hypothetically speaking, I usually
Mm-hmm.
look at it that somewhere in the middle lies the truth. It is with rare
Yeah,
exception that usually the story is exactly as it's told. There usually is some level of embellishment, but I will say
yeah,
these rumblings go back several seasons. This is not new.
yeah.
They've just been dealt with because of the popularity of the show. And he's making $1 million an episode, and if he sticks it out to season 6, or the next season, I think they're in. Yeah, he will now make $1.5 million an episode. Uh, is it
Does that give
financial?
credence
Just
to the
saying.
hypothetical scenario?
You know what? All I'm saying is the network's trying to feel all right, all right, all right. That's all I'm going to say to your hypothetical question. All right, I've got a couple more. I know you appreciate that. Um, just a couple of other things here that I want to hit on, and then we'll go. You mentioned Guardians of the Galaxy, not really expected to be a big hit. For our fans listening, you may not be a wrestling fan, but WWE has been the main wrestling organization for 20 years now, since they put pretty much everyone else out of business. Dave Batista, the actor, was Dave Batista, the wrestler, long before he was an actor. And to tell
Mm-hmm.
you how little faith the wrestling company, we're talking about wrestling, professional wrestling, had no faith in that movie. They wouldn't even bring him back for to help promote the movie because they thought it was going to be a failure. Everybody thought this is ridiculous, and it became a hit. And then guess what? All of a sudden, everybody wanted him back, and he was quite selective at that point. He did come back on his terms, making his kind of money, and well, they survived it. But yeah, they had the same thought that everybody else had, and it just didn't work out right. Earl, do you have any extra topics, any off topics you want to address before we bring this episode to a close?
Actually, I think it's a tie-in to what we've already discussed here. We were talking about The Last of Us,
Mhm.
and we have a few video game based movies that will be coming out this year. And but there's also I see that this is near and dear to your heart. It's a new multiverse, as the Lord Cephas has called it. So we have Mario being played by Pedro Pascal. Oh wait, no, that's Saturday Night Live. I mean Mario being played by Chris Pratt
It was good
of the
though.
Guardians.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are, rumors of Metroid and a few others. Zelda. Would
Yep,
you like to
Zelda.
touch on these topics and
Yep.
delve into it since you were the one who actually hit me with it initially?
Sure, and I'm not going to take credit for this. Received this information from another YouTuber, WDW Pro. Check him out. He does at least one video a day, and it's fantastic journalism. I encourage everyone to go follow his channel and become educated. That's why I do it. Yeah, there are a lot of leaks coming out of Nintendo that they really are looking at ramping up their video games. They believe, and I believe with them, Super Mario Brothers Earl is going to be a massive hit. And by the way, Chris
Yeah.
Pratt just lands in hit after hit after hit. Now, there's an old saying, there's a colloquialism about you could drop somebody in a vat of something and they'd find a diamond at the bottom of that barrel full of something. That's Chris Pratt. He everything he touches. is gold. And here you go again. Remember, look, the Lego movie.
Yep.
Just saying, everything he touches is just he's a blessed man. That's all I can say. But you have the Super
That's why
Mario.
he sings "Everything is awesome." Everything. Oh,
Everything
sorry.
is cool when you're part of a team. Yes, that is correct. I sing that to my girls just to irritate them. But they're talking about not only having Super Mario Brothers, but they're talking about having a live action Train Your Dragon, How to Train Your Dragon, because the goal is to eventually have a Zelda movie. And they would not want marketplace confusion if you have two animated series that are roughly about the same kind of things. So I think what
Yeah.
you're going to see is a live action How to Train Your Dragon movie, and then the Zelda movie, and that Metroid. By the way, for those who don't know, the character in Metroid was based on Ripley from the Alien movies, the Alien franchise. That's who that character was based upon. So let Jennifer Lawrence know that there was a strong female character. There was not. I'm sorry, my bad. I'm not going to survive the Hunger Games after that joke. Sorry, but that's who the character is based upon. And there's a lot of talk about having a Metroid game. And honestly, oh, if they have an end game like situation with all of these characters, I don't know that I could take it, Earl. My heart would be so full of joy that day. There'd be tears probably flowing. But again, those are the rumors that are out there. And I think in this case, again, where there's smoke, there's fire. What we can confirm is that based on all the trailers we've seen, Super Mario Brothers is going to be incredible, and it's going to go really really well. All right, anything else, Earl?
Field goal. Game over.
Dun, 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 dun. That's pretty much it. And there you are. You now have to go back and restart the level. All right. Well, we appreciate you listening to our zaniness this week. We ask you to just do a couple of things for us. Would you click that like button? If you're not subscribed, click the subscribe button. That really helps us in the YouTube algorithm. Leave a comment before you head out today or tonight, whenever you're listening to this or watching this. We absolutely do appreciate interacting with you. We are fans just like you are, and we enjoy
Yep.
having these discussions. As the Earls often said, whether we did this on YouTube and on podcasts or not, we'd still be doing this. We're just letting you all hear
Exactly.
what we think and what we talk about. So thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being a part. We really do appreciate it. On behalf of the Earl of Florida, I am your humble host, Lord Cephas. We will see you back next week, Midnight Magic Musings, same time, same channel. It will be episode 15. For the Earl, I'm Lord Cephas. So long, everybody.